Okay, let's talk about taxes. We all deal with them, right? But what are they really? It's so much more than just a number on your paycheck. It's a massive, powerful system that literally builds our world, shapes our economy, and even nudges the choices we make every day. So over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack how it all works.
So, let's kick things off with a huge question. We know taxes are pretty much a fact of life, but have you ever stopped to think about what makes a tax system genuinely good? Is it just about squeezing out as much money as possible, or is there something more to it, a smarter, more elegant way to design the whole thing? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out.
All right, before we can even get into the rules of a good system, we got to go back to square one. Why do we even have taxes? What is their fundamental purpose in the first place? Let's break it down.
At its absolute core, taxation is a compulsory levy. And that word, compulsory, is key. It's not optional. It's not a subscription you can cancel. It's a mandatory contribution that governments collect from pretty much everyone, individuals and businesses alike, to pay for all the shared stuff we rely on.
But here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just about filling the government's piggy bank. Not at all. Taxes are this incredible multi-purpose tool. They're used to redistribute wealth, to lessen inequality, to stabilize the entire economy, to influence what we buy, and even to shield local businesses from foreign competition. It's a whole lot more than just paying for roads.
Okay, so if you've got this incredibly powerful tool, you better have a solid instruction manual, right? Well, for that, we can actually look back over 2 centuries to the famous economist Adam Smith. He laid out what's basically the blueprint for a fair and effective tax system, and his ideas are still just as relevant today.
And this right here is the guiding light. It's all a balancing act. A system has to feel fair to the people paying into it, or they'll resist. But it also has to be efficient to run. I mean, what's the point if it costs more to collect the tax than the tax itself is worth? Get that balance wrong and, man, the whole thing can just fall apart. The sweet spot is hitting both fairness and efficiency.
And that brings us to his 4 legendary principles, or as they're often called, canons of taxation. You can think of these as the 4 pillars holding up any well-built tax system. They are equity, certainty, convenience, and economy. So let's quickly dig into what each of those really means.
First up, we've got equity. And this is arguably the big one. It's the core idea of fairness. It says that people should contribute based on their ability to pay. Sounds simple, right? But fairness can be a tricky concept, which is why economists break it down into 2 specific types.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly, the 2 sides of the fairness coin. On one side, you have horizontal equity. That's simple. If you and I earn the exact same income, we should pay the exact same amount in tax. Makes sense. But then you've got vertical equity. This is the idea that people with higher incomes shouldn't just pay more tax, but should pay a larger percentage of their income in tax. That's the principle that underpins progressive tax systems.
The other 3 pillars are just as crucial and super practical. First, there's certainty. You should know exactly what you owe, when you owe it, and how to pay it. No surprise tax bills. Then there's convenience. Paying taxes should be as painless as possible. Think about taxes being automatically deducted from your paycheck. That's convenience in action. And finally, economy. The whole system has to be efficient. It just can't cost the government $1 to collect 50 cents.
Okay, so we've got the rulebook for a good tax system. Now let's talk about how governments actually get behind the wheel and use it. Imagine the economy as a car. Sometimes you need to hit the gas to speed things up, and other times you got to pump the brakes. Well, taxes are one of the main pedals the government uses to do just that. And the official name for this is fiscal policy. It's basically the government's economic playbook. By tweaking tax rates and adjusting its own spending levels, a government can try to steer the entire country's economy towards specific goals, like creating jobs or keeping prices stable.
And here's that playbook in action. You can see it side by side. When the economy is sluggish, in a recession, the government hits the gas with an expansionary policy. It'll cut taxes, leaving more money in our pockets to spend, which boosts demand. But when the economy is running too hot and inflation is getting out of control, it hits the brakes with a contractionary policy. It might raise taxes to pull some of that extra cash out of the system and cool things down.
Now let's bring all this high-level theory right back down to earth. How does all this policy and all these principles actually show up on our day-to-day lives? Where do we literally see our tax dollars at work?
Well, it's pretty much all around you. The taxes we pay fund the roads we drive on every day, the schools our kids go to, the hospitals we rely on when we're sick, and the police and military who keep us safe.
These are the huge, essential public services that we could never fund on our own, but can easily afford when we all chip in together.
And hey, remember that idea of using taxes to influence choices? This is it, out in the wild. Governments use taxes to send some pretty clear signals. They slap high sin taxes on things like cigarettes and alcohol to discourage people from using them. And on the flip side, they offer tax credits and incentives to encourage things they do want, like investing in green energy or starting a new business. It's a financial nudge.
So we've seen how taxes affect us as individuals. But what about for businesses? This is where things get a little more complicated. Because the profit a company shows to its investors isn't always the same profit it reports to the taxman. Let's break down why that is. So, why the two different numbers? Well, as you can see here, it really just boils down to who you're talking to and what set of rules you're playing by. Accounting profit is calculated for stakeholders, investors, banks, and it follows standard accounting rules. But taxable profit? That's calculated just for the tax authorities, and it follows the specific letter of the tax law. For instance, a business might get a huge fine. That's an expense in their accounting books, but you can't deduct a fine from your taxes, so the taxable profit often ends up being higher.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. As we've seen, a really good tax system is trying to do a lot of things at once. It's trying to be fair, simple, convenient, and efficient. But in the real world, those goals can sometimes conflict. A system that's perfectly fair might become incredibly complicated, and a system that's super simple might not feel very fair to everyone. So it leaves us with a tough question. If you were forced to choose just one principle to build a system around, which would it be? Fairness or simplicity? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.